you're looking at your phone like, okay, where can I go next?
The potential for a playoff game, which is good, but then the safety.
You good, Bryce?
Thank you.
All right, welcome everyone to the Thursday, December 4th meeting of the Business and Community Affairs Committee. Today we have one item on the agenda, and that is a discussion involving minimum lot sizes for development. I believe Planning Director Ms. Hudson has a presentation,
Correct.
so I'll go ahead and turn it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. So just a little background for the discussion on the minimum lot sizes. We were at the October 2nd BACA meeting and looking at, whether or not we would have no minimum lot sizes in the following districts. So the R1, basically all of our residential districts. R1, R1A, which is our single family attached district, R2, which is our multifamily, you see mainly duplexes in that district, RM2, basically the same thing, RM6 is our apartment district, and then R3 is also a multifamily district. I think at that meeting, one of the things that we talked about was, what precedents have we seen? So we went back and we looked at a few places, and Spokane, Houston, Austin, and Fayetteville have greatly reduced the minimum lot sizes in their residential districts. And apparently, Texas now prohibits 19 of their largest cities from requiring lot sizes above 3,000 square feet or lots with widths greater than 30 and depths greater than 75 feet. So as we talked about before, the considerations for the minimum lot sizes, this will touch not only the zoning ordinance, but it will also touch the subdivision regulations that Scott and his group review. But we would be looking at the building setbacks, minimum lot frontages, minimum lot widths, the lot coverages. That's something I want to touch on today as well. And then also in the subdivision regulations, currently it is, they have to abut the street no less than 35 feet, but at the build line. So right now at your 25-foot front yard setback, we require a width of 50 feet. So.
Is that for like cul-de-sacs?
For cul-de-sacs, yeah, typically.
Other factors that might be impacted by reducing or having no requirements or minimum lot sizes. And this is one of the things I really want to hone in and I want to talk about, and I actually asked other staff to be here today so we could get some discussion going on it. But the utilities and sanitation, one of the things that I didn't put on here and I should have is mailboxes. People getting their mail. But we're talking about the trucks coming in and picking up the poly carts. I just want to make sure when we start looking at this that we're able to serve these developments, for the citizens. Another thing, the off-street parking requirements. Current regulations require 2 off-street parking spaces. And then, we've talked about this before, but the emergency vehicle access as well. So we met about this several times, and our recommendations, and again, I'm open for discussion on this, but our recommendations moving forward, we would like to start with the 35 feet at the street frontage. We would not have the 50-foot width requirement, so that would be gone. Looking at minimum lot depth of 75 feet, so going from 100 to 75. And then one of the things we talked about last time, and again bringing it back around, is the front yard setback. So 15 feet for the main building, but bumping the garage setback to 25. Currently, the minimum is 20, but I know that Scott had mentioned in the last meeting that when you put it at 20, you can get one car, but if they try to squeeze 2 cars in there, you're hanging over the sidewalk.
Or a pickup, the modern size pickup, the only way it can be off the sidewalk is to literally have your bumper on the garage door. So to leave a little bit of space to make sure that we're maintaining our ADA compliance and make sure that, I know that one of the goals here is to be able to create neighborhoods that are very inviting and friendly and a really interesting frontscape and inviting people to the front yard. Well, if all the driveways are blocked and you can't get up and down the sidewalks, you kind of start losing that feel. And I know I spoke with yourself and the mayor about that after the last meeting, and I discussed that. So that's where that comes from for us.
But I think, it's important that we, allow the garage to be set back much further than the entrance. We want entrances and porches to front the street, not garages, so.
We totally okay with that. Agree.
So for the side yards, still keeping that at the 5 feet for access, getting your lawnmower back and forth, from the yard and everything. And then the majority, so right now, it's a 20-foot rear setback, but the majority of the PUDs that you guys have seen, for as long as I can remember, one of the requests is they ask for a 10-foot rear yard setback. And so that was what we fell back on for the rear yard on that one. Maintaining the existing off-street parking standards, and then also maintain the existing 65% lot coverage. I think if they're gonna go below the 65%, then they have to go in for rezoning and give council the opportunity to review it. That's my suggestion at this point. Before I go to the images, I just want to circle back on the discussion about the widths and getting services into the subdivisions and for the residents and everything. And the other thing I thought about, and I wanted to make sure I said this today, was if we don't have anything at all, and someone engages with an engineer and an architect to design their neighborhood, they come in, they apply, we go to DRT, and we say, I'm sorry, this isn't gonna work. So we send them back, they have to redesign, so then they're upset, you guys are getting the phone calls. So I think if we have that minimum, that base that we can, give to the individuals when they come in and talk to us, I really think we would be ahead of the game as opposed to just saying nothing.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the idea is we wanna open it up to see what the market will build, but at the same time, not overwhelm you as a staff that where you're having to make judgment calls here and there and have nothing to really back it up with.
Exactly.
So I think having some set of standards is fair, as long as the goal being the lot size itself, like no minimum there, but there's certain metrics, you've gotta hit setbacks, you've gotta hit
Right.
certain things.
And
So you'll
this,
get
if we look at this being a 35 by 75 foot lot,
Yeah.
that is a 26, 25 lot size.
Okay.
And we'll show you how a home can fit on that and the slides that we have upcoming to help you see that. But this doesn't preclude anybody from being able to come in and say, we want to do something different, and doing that as a PUD, which we've done some very successful neighborhoods with, houses that kind of are along a common entry area, that they all have a flag lot out to the front, and they meet all of our requirements, and it's a very small clustered neighborhood, and it looks great. Or the villages that are 30-foot wide lots typically, but they're 100-foot depth. So there'd still be, we're not telling anybody they can't do something different, but we're at least opening up more opportunities here without having to go to a PUD or an SPUD.
Yeah, absolutely. I think to that point, I would love to see if there was even a simplified review or approval process for these, so that you wouldn't have to necessarily hire a zoning attorney and go through the full PUD process. And I mean, that's a very complicated process for the layperson. And I'm thinking, this is the person that owns a property, they've got an alley, they want to build an ADU and sell the alley off the back. Well, I mean, again, hiring the zoning attorney, going through that full rigmarole to just split off part of your own property. I don't want to create more of a burden and more red tape. I think the whole idea is that we get, and so if there was a simplified process, I don't know what that looks like or what that is, but
So can we talk about that for
Yeah,
a second
please.
then? So shifting gears just a little bit, but if we're talking about a single family lot that they've built an ADU in the back, they've got the single family home in the front. When they go to subdivide that, which would be the process of a short form plat,
okay,
so it wouldn't be a lot
yeah,
split.
Right.
Where they would have to go forward and do a short form plat, which again, Scott's group would take care of that.
administrative, essentially.
But when we do that, we can't create a nonconformity. So we have to make sure that we still have the 10 feet. So by reducing that 20 feet to 10 feet, that might help them. Because these will be the older lots, 100, 110 feet in depth.
And that's the only heartburn I have with the 75-foot depth, is that, you know, we're talking about a 140-foot lot, 140-foot deep historic lot. You can't split that into two 75-foot lots. So requiring it to be 75-foot deep, you're basically effectively saying it can only be one lot at that point.
So what if we do something that's new development has to be 75 and existing platted lots would have to be 50? What would that do? If they wanted to subdivide?
Sure.
It's just how we would just have that, how that would be incorporated into the zoning regs and the subdivision regulations.
I think that's,
But that's what they would look at if they were gonna do the short form plat, and that does require an engineer or surveyor to do that
survey
anyway.
and title work and all
Yeah.
that stuff, so, that might be a compromise there. That's the only part, when I see the minimum lot depth, that's the only thing that gives me pause, but, Mayor Holman, you raised your hand.
Yeah, I think setbacks, I mean, I'd rather, if we're gonna do that, I don't wanna require there be a backyard, at all. And front yard, maybe 5 feet. And for the garage, be set back 25, that's fine, but the front door of the house wants to be 5 feet. If the developer wants the front door of the homes to be 5 feet from the sidewalk, I want that to be allowed. And no requirement for a backyard, and then side yard 2.5 feet,
So you'd have.
so 5 total.
5 total, yeah.
So, I prefer none, really.
Yeah, I mean, I get the,
If there's no backyard, I think there should be none.
unless there's alley access, I get the reason why, because, I mean, utility companies have to get back there or whatever.
Well, I mean,
whatever
that
might
should be planned in with it then. The
Sure.
utility easement, to me, shouldn't be part of someone's backyard. Utility companies should not be allowed to come into someone's private property and disturb their trees and their gardens. If there needs to be utility easement, then it needs to be between the fences of the properties. And the utility companies need to maintain it, is my opinion on that. And if we can legislate that through this policy, I'd prefer to do that.
Yeah.
So I don't want the utility easement to be the burden of the property owner, and that mean that utility companies have the right to come on people's private property because their easements on their property.
I think that's.
So if we can separate the easement from people's private property and make that part of the development from the get-go,
I think
that'd be
that's-
ideal.
I think it's easy to do in new development, it's harder to do.
Right,
in
yeah.
Historic development.
I know that's what we've been talking about too, is where this isn't really gonna be that applicable to, as much to existing
Yeah.
developed parts of the city. This is gonna be about
Right.
making sure that new subdivisions don't have to be the way that we've been building subdivisions for the last 50 years.
Yeah.
And just that, you know, our most walkable urban neighborhoods were built before there were any minimum lot standards or any regulations for that matter.
Yeah,
But
for
I
sure.
mean, so that's kind of where I'm at. And unless we just have to have, like the garage part, like I said, makes sense for people backing out or not blocking the sidewalk, but I don't think we should require a front yard or a backyard, and if we have to have a side yard, it should be as minimal as possible.
I think that's all fair. You know, not to muddy the waters, but does it make sense to have two sets of regulations, basically one for greenfield, one for historic lots? Again, I don't want to create more work, but it sounds like we're trying to thread the needle with one solution on two problems.
And that might be it, but so I just need to throw this out there though, so if we're looking at side yards at 2.5 feet, then we're looking at fire rating for the new structures.
Yeah.
So if we did 3,
Yeah.
if we did 3-foot setback,
It's gonna be greater than 5.
that would be the 6, and that would not require the fire rating.
Well, I want to leave that up to the developer. If they want to do 2.5 and that require them to have to do firewall, then that's their call. That's what I want to.
Yeah, I think minimum setbacks, so you could always increase.
They can say, okay, I don't want to have to do firewall, so I'm going to have to do the 3 or 5 foot. But I don't want to say you have to do 3 because we want to prevent you from having to do a firewall. That's not our decision. That is their decision. If they want to do 1 foot or no foot, like we're doing in Center City, and share a wall and have to do the fire thing, then that's what I prefer, their decision.
I think what you're saying, and to me, there's a further distinction here between old, new, and then front garage access or rear garage access.
Yeah.
To me, if you're doing a rear garage access, 0 lot line if you want it. I totally agree with that. But if you don't have a rear access to that property, you cannot, if I need someone to come in and replace the back door on my house, if they can't get it through the house, I can't have the backyard, I can't have anything in the backyard or repairs done on my home in the backyard. And that's my only concern, is making sure there's at least enough passable space to get by the side of the house to be able to do anything in the backyard without having to go through the home. So to me, I think what you're saying makes perfect sense if you're gonna go to a rear access. And I think if that's the style that a community wants to be, a neighborhood, I think it's a great, we just saw that with the North Norman, I always get it
Norman.
confused, I always say it backwards. And they've got a combination of front and rear access. And I think that where you have that rear access with the alley, that now that's where your utilities go. You can get to the back of the house from the alley and get to the front of the house from the front. But if you've got fence to fence or, backyard to backyard, or you've got to be able to get access back there somehow. And at 3 foot, you really can't get through there. And that's my only thought process on that. So to me, it's like now we're kind of in an A, B, and C when you start really breaking it down and think about the functionality. Totally agree with what you're saying, but like I said, I just think that there's a distinction between the two front and rear access garages.
And I mainly just think that we don't need to regulate that. That the development itself, like they would know what access to the people that are gonna live here are gonna need or not. And so I just don't know that we should tell them that, well, we're concerned that people might not be able to get to the backyard to do maintenance. No, I don't think that's I don't think that should be the concern of the city. That should be the concern of the developer when they're building it. And, their ability to sell those lots. So I just don't think that we need to do that. And there are examples of wall-to-wall development in bigger cities maybe where there is no alleyway and it's fence line to fence line and it's wall-to-wall the whole block. And so maybe that's more inconvenient for people that will live there to have to let somebody go through the house, but they would be choosing to buy that property. The developer would have chosen to build it that way. And so that's kind of where I'm at, is that I just don't think it's something we don't need to regulate or legislate that type of detail, in my opinion.
Well, and I mean, that's definitely in the spirit of what I'm trying to accomplish here, what we're trying to accomplish, and that, less regulation, get out of the way, let the market tell us what they can and will, or willing to build. And, I'd hate to pass this policy and have some, weird requirement in there that just keeps anybody from being able to do what we're envisioning here. I don't know that I have the answer for what you're describing, but I like I said, I definitely think it's in the spirit of what we're trying to do here. So I'm willing to entertain that conversation. But I will defer to you guys on the practicality and like the enforcement of being able to do it. Councilmember Grant, I know you had your hand raised a while ago.
Yeah, I'm definitely for 2 sets because, just going over Ward 4 maps earlier, we're a little fiddly. And also I think for the areas that are already developed, we imagine increments happening or like incremental development. So I kind of wonder one of our future plans is like a pattern book. Like how would that work if we're doing this? Yeah, so that's why I'm like leaning towards the 2 different sets, just thinking in the future of where we're going and what this could look like in the already developed areas. Mine's pretty dense, but I know, thinking about other areas that could get redeveloped, it might
And
be
of course,
different.
giant infill on Griffin Land.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yes, please.
Sorry. So what would be like a threshold for greenfield versus infill? Like how would we say if you have this much, you get to do this, if you have
I think we've got the core Norman boundary defined already. Maybe it's just a core, non-core set of rules. I think every historic district falls in the core boundary, goes from Robinson to Imhoff, 24th to 12th. So essentially, I mean, all the existing infrastructure in neighborhoods, all the alleys. And then everything outside of that would be greenfield. So I personally think that works. Obviously, I'm not trying to drive the train by myself, so interested in feedback from Mayor Holman.
Yes, with reconfiguring these lots probably is easier when there are alleyways, so central Norman I think makes sense. But I think throughout Norman, corner lots, we talked about in Ward 2 on Wiley and McGee, there's several houses where they've had enough room on the side yard where they've have a driveway that faces Wiley, and they've built a garage on the side. That's enough room where there could be another tiny, that could be divided and there'd be a tiny house instead of a big backyard on Wiley. And other neighborhoods throughout Norman too, I could think of where if they have a corner lot and they've got a pretty sizable frontage on the side, they might want to sell that off and have a tiny home built. Maybe their HOA doesn't allow it, but who knows?
And I'll
Maybe there's
bet
not
you-
an HOA.
Yeah, in those neighborhoods, probably not HOAs. And honestly, when you think about just go down Boyd, you're in the 1950s, 1960s construction. That just describes almost every single corner lot in those neighborhoods. Wide side yard, deep backyard.
Right.
That if you came off the side yard, I mean, there's enough real estate to meet
Yeah.
all of those requirements.
So in the middle of a block in an existing development, it's probably going to be unlikely, I would say. But corner lots, pretty much in any neighborhood I could think of, if there's enough side yard, and then anywhere where there's an alleyway.
Well, and to that point, I'd like to be able to do these like where you didn't have to do a flag lot, where I could build a tiny home in the backyard of my house and not provide a driveway to it. You could access through sidewalk. We share the existing driveway. You know, it's not. I don't necessarily need to get a car back to my tiny house.
Well, I don't know that we're necessarily saying a car. I
Yeah.
think we're just saying that it needs to, for addressing purposes and for access, there has to be a way to get back
For
there.
sure. Yeah.
You know, I've seen some interesting things. I was looking through some other communities. I'm trying to learn more and catch up. And I was looking at an example in Fayetteville where they actually had like a fourplex across the front, and there was a fourplex oriented in the other direction on the lot behind it. And I was trying to understand, it was 8 independent parcels, but when you actually finally got to the plat map, they had a large common area that went to the back, so it was a common access easement.
Okay. There you
They
go.
had a way to get back there. They had a dedicated way to get there. And that's all we want to make sure of.
Yeah.
Because if you sell a tiny home, someone else buy it, and you don't have an access to it, and the person and sells the front, and they go, I'm not gonna let you through.
It's fair.
So we have to make sure that we maintain accesses, and that's why a flag lot is so important. So that you always have a frontage to a public street, so that you're never able to cut off or do something that impacts the other owner. And that's why we keep making sure that the flag lot or a connection to a street is of a major importance to us.
I think if the flag pole is like a 3-foot minimum or something. Again, the idea of not big 12-foot driveways to the backyard, but a simple cross-access agreement, I think is fair and totally doable. What minimum that needs to be, that's a different question, I think. Absolutely see Mayor Holman's point, but
Just like if you have a new development and you want to do a 400 square foot lot with a 200 square foot tiny home on it, you want to do a whole block of those. Or if you want to do one that was 400 square feet, and then the one next to it was 800, and then the one next to that was 6. I doubt a developer's probably going to do that just because of the cost of having a whole bunch of different ones. Are probably going to want something more uniformed, but
well, that's
I think there'd
actually
be an entire neighborhood where the lots were 500 square feet, if
Right.
that's what a developer wanted to do.
yeah.
And they could fit 2,000 tiny homes instead of 200 regular sized houses.
That's the goal. I mean, that's the goal of a quick, fast, cheap, easy way to get increased housing stock. And so,
I mean, the one by Hitachi, what are the lot sizes on that one?
They're like 30 by 100 on average.
Theirs are deep, so they would meet that. So they're they're not as wide as what.
They're 5 foot narrower.
Okay.
And
But they're about
that, you know, that
25
was
feet
approved.
longer.
You know, that's something that that would still be available even with this rule.
I guess let me ask, we're talking about flag lots and I'm thinking about, so a flag lot obviously is not gonna have 35 feet at the street frontage. How do we allow those to be more easily approvable, I guess?
I'm sorry, I said it.
Just a flag lot is not gonna be, obviously, probably 35 feet at the street frontage. I mean, that flag piece is not gonna be, and so if this is the new recommendation, how do we satisfy those without requiring a bunch of special approval processes and things like that?
Well, I mean,
Again, I'm trying to get away from,
I mean, it's still, I mean, a PUD is just, extra
Still have to be-
documentation. It would still take the same planning
still be a
process.
PUD, okay.
So it'd just be a PUD, and like I said, we've approved those. Those are being built today. There's some interesting ones right by the Will Rogers Theater, that they're two nice homes, and I went and looked it up, and they did the same thing. It's a flag lot
Yeah.
to the one in the back, but it's a shared access to the garage of the one in front. So I think there's a lot of, just different ways to handle that, but I think you've got to be able to think through that.
Yes.
And it's gonna depend on the size of the lots and exactly how they want to lay it out. And I think that gives them the flexibility at that point to tell us what they want. We had the large lot right there on Lindsay Street, between Pickard and Berry on the south side. It was one large lot. They came in and divided it with flag lots into 3 lots. I don't know if they've constructed yet, I haven't gone to look for it. Very interesting. Then we also had the one that McCurdy did.
Yeah.
That he did the same thing, where it's a long flag lot. It was, I think the flag lot split the driveway, so they each had 10 foot on each side. That driveway served both. So all these things can be done, and staff is supportive of those.
I guess, okay, we've talked about PUDs for existing lots. What about a greenfield development and you wanna do flag lots? Is this gonna keep you from being able to, like, say I wanted to
No.
do an entire subdivision that had a 5-foot cross access to the backyard? Is that 35-foot minimum lot width gonna
No,
keep
because your
you?
PUD would be able to.
I'm saying not a PUD by right, just going out and
No,
building an
you'd have
R1.
to, that would have to be a PUD.
I would prefer if you're gonna build an R1, a new R1 neighborhood, and the idea is that we don't have to build them like we historically have to, or have been, that we allow flag lots by right, essentially, is kind of where I'm going with that.
So, but the minimum would be the driveway width to get them back. Think of an ambulance. I mean, if an ambulance was gonna go back there, how would they get back there? There's no alley, right? Is that what you're saying?
Sure, no alley.
And it's 10
Does
foot?
does the ambulance itself need to be able to drive back there?
That's
Can
kinda
it
what I'm
not be
doing.
parked in front and the
That's-
But it
paramedics
depends
go
on
back?
the emergency.
Okay, let us show you the next slide then. 'cause
Okay, I'm
think-
sorry, I know.
No, you need to see the next 2 slides because we're starting to get into a problem where there's not enough on-street parking even available when you get the lots too narrow.
Yeah.
Because there's not enough space between driveways to even park a car unless you're driving a tiny car. So that is another limiting factor that we have to think about, and that's why we're recommending that you still think about that.
Yeah.
So,
And I've got other thoughts on the parking part.
yeah, so if you look at this, we drew this up, this is just a quick sketch. You can see that it's a 12-foot driveway, single car driveway, the 35-foot lot. You can see the 75-foot lot there is kind of the middle line. We drew this as 100, and then we started talking about the 75 late last week, so we just kind of left it, but the 75-foot is the dash there in the middle of the backyard. This is a 1,000 square foot home on that lot. So you can kind of get the idea, the dimensions, what it looks like. It's the 5-foot setbacks. But if you imagine the house next to that has a driveway too, you're starting to get to where by the time you have your curb radiuses, getting a vehicle parked is gonna be very difficult. Now, if they do the driveways on opposite sides, you can maybe get 1, maybe 2 cars, potentially, but maybe not, depending on how well people park. But you've still gotta be able to back out of that driveway safely. So that's a concern that we have with and we're starting to hear that there's some concerns with people that are living in the villages with the 30-foot lots, that parking is becoming a major problem and an issue. And I know that, the ultimate goal is we want people to give up their cars, but I don't know that we're there yet. So that's why we kind of have laid out what we have and some of the thoughts that we have. We do have it shown with the 20-foot driveway for a 2-car garage, and it just doesn't really function very well. You can see you've got a very little porch there that's basically of no use whatsoever. So basically you're saying that at 35-foot wide lot, you're down to a single car garage home.
Yeah.
And that's fine. There are people that would be all they would ever want and need. And that's great. But that's just the things that we're starting to try to think through and look at from a practical point of view.
For sure. No, I think that's fair. And I, instead of legislating how we get, how do I say this? Instead of trying to figure out how people could park as many cars as they want, maybe we should put a cap on how many cars you can park at one of these. If you want to build something according to this set of rules, you're limited to X number of cars per X number of square feet or something. And just like really try to put a cap, instead of trying to build this one size fits all solution that says, well, yeah, we can still park 2 and 3 cars here. We'll just say, no, you can park 1, and that's what you get. And if you don't want to live in this area, that's fine. Again, developers will, if they can't lease or sell the product, they won't build it. And so,
But I think that's another situation, kind of like the rule of 3.
Yeah.
I don't know how you'd ever, which car is at which one, and I'm just visiting for 45 minutes, and I don't know that you could ever enforce that if we tried to put that in place. I think that'd be a difficult task.
it could be. I think I've got some ideas, but yeah, Councilman Grant.
Also, I'm just a little curious because this was a discussion we had a few months ago about home occupations. And one would assume even in this scenario that people could still be working out of their homes, and that would also mean more traffic too. So, yeah, how would that work?
The changes that we made, I think it said you could have no more than 2 customers there at the same time.
I guess
For the salon, that was kind of directed at the barber shop, beauty shop.
Yeah.
But, if you're an accountant, you're gonna have 1
I guess,
there.
yeah, it would probably be on the developer to figure out what they're doing with their product. If it's near a transportation route or something, just thinking about how we're trying to get away from cars. Maybe if it's something people in the neighborhood know about, they would walk down to a salon in their neighborhood versus drive over somewhere else. But in practice, though, people are building their client base and they're not always in their neighborhood. So, yeah, just something to think about.
Absolutely.
Especially since we're talking about affordability and we want people to be able to live, work, play in their area.
But to kind of go back to something that you were saying, to me, rather than doing a long skinny flag lot, and then why not do it to where you've got 2 double stacked side by side, and everybody's got a flag with a joint area that goes to all the garages, where you could basically pull in 4 of them into one driveway, and they all have their garages facing that area. So I think there's other ways to do it other than just thinking about a skinny flag lot from the back. I think you start thinking about double stacking and how do you effectively do that in a way that is actually something that may be a much more sellable type of an operation.
That's a
The
good point.
Enclave has a couple of
That was Fountain View.
shared driveways
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
Fountain View did it, but like I said, the one that this was when we were up at the Will Rogers, and we walked down, like, look at those houses. We drove back there to look at them, but that's what they did.
Phenomenal.
And they were probably 2,000 square foot.
2-story.
Maybe it would be a good exercise to enlist our development community and say, hey, if you had this set of rules, what would you build? If you had this set of rules, what would you build? And just kind of get 4 or 5 different scenarios for each. Because I think you're right. I think there are some creative solutions that we're looking at it very top down, black and white, from a legalistic standpoint. But I might just be punching in the dark and, assuming this is something the developers want and they don't necessarily do. I don't know how we go about doing that, soliciting open design, not even competition, just say, hey.
I'll get the students at OU to do it for me.
Yeah.
And potentially, we meet with our building community. We talk about building code changes and those types of things. The opportunity to have an initial conversation with our builders and say, if we started with a blank slate, and what we were trying to account for are these things, what should either the rules look like, or what does this trigger in your mind from the builder and the market's perspective?
Yeah.
And then let them work on that for a handful of weeks and then regroup and see if we could.
For me, it was the 75-foot depth that gave me pause. That might be a non-starter, it might not even be an issue, it might be the 30-foot width. And I know from my own practical experience as a professional what I would do. Again, I'm not the one taking the risk and deploying the capital, so I don't, it's easy for me to say in theory in a vacuum what I think would be great, but again, there's a reality to this. So, Mayor Holman.
Yeah, I was gonna say maybe some compromise could be a recommended 30 by 50. But that doesn't have to be X amount of feet on the side or front or
Could
back.
squish it.
It's however you fit it on.
Yeah.
It just and that would be 1,500 square foot lots. The staff recommendation would be 2,625, which would be lower than, I guess, what these state laws that are saying they can't be over 3,000
Right.
in some of these, in Texas.
Yeah, maybe the
But-
requirement is just that you have to provide access, rear access for emergency or, uses. How you do that is up to interpretation. Just we require that you provide it.
But since we've approved a 30-foot frontage on that project, and because of mention the 100-foot lots, 50.
Yeah.
Divide by, just divide 100 by 2. And recommend that be the minimum, but again, if somebody wanted to design an entirely urban neighborhood in a new development without having to go through.
Yeah.
Like, why can't that be allowed by right?
Well, I think very much like the Wheeler District in Oklahoma City. That was a greenfield development, and it's very much new urbanist. We're zero lot line, everything's alley loaded. I mean, it was built from scratch like that in 2015.
And there's
so
some issues that the developer is having to deal with now because
Yeah.
of how they designed it, right?
But again, that was the developers.
But it's not the city of Oklahoma City's
No.
problem in that neighborhood, I don't think.
No.
That's the developer's issue with selling the lots or building it out.
I think
If there's
that's more related to price. I think than it is
Yeah.
the functionality of the lots. But yeah, again, it's the market.
But I mean, maybe that's a starting, or, if we don't want to eliminate it completely, maybe we have a recommended, or maybe we say their minimum is 1,500. It has to be at least 30 by 50, but you have latitude for how you position it within that. I don't know, that's.
Yeah.
But I want to get us out of the way as much as possible.
That's the goal, is get out of the way. And so, I mean, I'll obviously defer to staff on the best way to do that, because again, I'm not trying to create a administrative nightmare for you guys. And this is, again, it's supposed to simplify things, not make them more complicated.
Is there a solution whereby I know when we were having conversations during the AIM process about larger acreage in Ward 5, that when we looked at density and how you could develop, you could push a whole bunch of density to one side of the property and the rest of it won't ever develop. In these scenarios, and so somebody's gonna develop a 7-acre greenfield residential thing. Would it make the world simpler if the developer was required to not exceed 65% coverage of this 7-acre site? Go knock yourself out.
That's kind of the goal. Yeah, same here. It's 1,000 square foot site or whatever the site is. I mean, your max is 765. However you do that, if it's in whatever configuration.
Because even the neighborhood in behind Hitachi, that was 5, 6, 7, 8 acres in total. You got to account for your stormwater and you
Detention and all the.
got 65% coverage limitation.
But again, special approval.
And that's one thing that we've, talked about. So can you go over 65? Yes, but it changes your calculations. It does mean you're gonna have more detention. It does mean you're gonna have a higher stormwater runoff and you're gonna have to have more storage capacity. That by itself is going to cause you to have more green space. So you start trading off things at some point. Is it gonna be an HOA area or owner maintained area type of decision? And I think that that's something, and we were just saying we believe that the villages may have been over 65% coverage, but they had extra to cover for green and for detention. So, and that's something we had discussed the other day when we were having our meeting, is that, that 65 is kind of what our, standard is now, but you can go above that.
Right. Robin.
I mean, could you do it to where you have this big of a property and as long as you don't go over the coverage of the total property, each lot can be 0, or can be 100%.
Right, as long as the.
As long as you
aggregate-
had this strip over here that put the total under 65 for the entire thing.
I think that's in the spirit of the
Because usually
ordinance.
what we see is, each individual property, each individual house, each individual apartment is staying under the 65%.
Yeah.
Instead of what about just the total development being under 65%? And if they want the whole street to be 100% coverage, but then over here, there's nothing to compensate.
Yeah, I agree.
It's
I think
kind of
that's
like
what
the
you're trying
selling
to
square
say.
rights,
Yeah.
right?
That's exactly what I'm saying,
Okay,
is you can do that, and I think that you could do that today as a PUD. But I think the problem is we start saying you can't go over 85%, and they all build to 85%, but then every property owner comes in and puts in an extra patio, and now they're all at 95%, and now we're under detained.
Yeah.
That's the risk, and that is going to involve more engineering and more planning. So, those things, they're all available today, and we've done developments like that already, where we've, kind of overlooked the 65% because it was a cluster development, and can be done that's what we consider that. I have proposed exactly what you're saying to numerous developers for commercial. Instead of doing your typical, little strip mall, why not do little clusters and with green around it and parking split up? And so, we're all aware of those type of items and ways of handling the stormwater and the coverage issues.
I guess there's probably not any single-family zoned property in Norman that's not developed or platted, right? Any new greenfield development that's gonna be a new subdivision is typically agricultural right now. And then they have to come get a zoning change from us,
Not more than
or they have
likely.
to assemble everything. So I don't really ever see any large developments come through by right? Only little
think you're
tiny
right.
ones.
That's a good point.
They all have to come forward because they're typically all wanting to build on zip land that's agriculturally zoned.
The coverage is different.
So maybe my theory of trying to be able to do all this by right is just unfounded.
That they would still have, but in our discussions about overhauling our zoning code
Sure.
and with the AIM plan, it's like this type of stuff could be by
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
I'm
Because it's
sure
not necessarily, some of this may not be that way.
our ability to make a map and just for the ability to make sure we're not operating under an assumption, but operating with real data. What is zoned R1, 2, 3? Is there anything zoned that over an acre in that same boundary you described
Core area.
that doesn't have something on, or it's not already platted and
It's just waiting, like just nobody's ever developed it. It's just been,
I can't.
by
think of
right,
one.
they could do it, but they just
Thinking of a
don't.
couple sites that are not in core.
Yeah, Griffin is it, and it still needs to be platted.
Griffin's
so
not
you-
zoned yet.
You would get to approve all of it,
So
so.
Griffin's not zoned anything, so, but I don't know of any like R1, R2, R3 zoned lots that are vacant that have been approved and just are just.
Nobody's ever done it.
There's commercial lots that are
Yeah.
commercial that aren't developed.
Yeah, we can run some maps quick and even email them out to everybody on council just to keep that thought at the forefront.
Yeah.
And we did just get confirmation that the federal dollars for our zoning update was approved, so the dollars are now in the bank. We'll start that project. Contract been awarded and I'll go full speed ahead, so.
So it's a waiting
You got what you
game.
need? Yeah.
Where we at here? Best clear direction?
As staff,
These conversations we
we
have to
really
have.
want to see available housing options. We want to see different type of developments. We're all in support of that. It's just, how do we do it within the framework that we can control, or not control, that's not the word I want to use.
Yeah.
But to where we have some very easy ones to do. And then the ones that get more complicated, that get more detailed, that need that extra work, that we're getting that information.
Yeah.
To make sure that it is being handled appropriately, to make sure that we are getting, We still gotta protect our stormwater, we still gotta make sure that we have water and sewer capacities. We still have to make sure that, traffic in and out of it's gonna be fine. So, there's a balance that we're trying to find here too. And I don't want there to be a thought that we're trying to find ways to restrict these things from happening. We support it, there's a lot of it we're trying to figure out how to do too. And we're looking to surrounding communities and communities in other states to try to learn that.
So I will say, if everything we did, and Laura just said this, if everything we did was R1, it would be a beautiful place. Because we wouldn't have PUDs that people would have to come in and ask for a copy of what their setbacks are and what can they do here and what can they do there. So, I mean, ideally, like Scott said, that would be wonderful if we could just have R1, R2. And I agree with you about we want to get out of the way. We do. But like Scott said, I really feel like, and I asked Nathan to come too because of sanitation, I really feel like I just don't want to be that group that also people come in and say, well, I tried to design that and they told me I couldn't. And they don't have any requirements, but then they told me I couldn't.
Right.
And so I worry about that too.
Well, I think the comment that Mayor Holman just made about essentially everything is effectively gonna have to come in as a PUD. I mean, we don't have any R1 base zoning
For the core area.
really anywhere. I think anywhere in Norman. I don't think there's any R1 zoned property probably that's not agricultural and would require a PUD to begin with.
Yeah, there's no greenfield,
So-
it's just a
Until we
big,
get the zoning code updated.
Yep.
And so, again, me trying to figure out how to do all this by right maybe isn't such of a push. Maybe the two sets of rules, one for Greenfield, which will be a PUD, so we'll have extra control, and then one for historic lots, which again will probably be a PUD, we'll have more control. But getting some base level sets of recommendations, I'd like to go with recommendations, not requirements if possible, especially if they're gonna be PUDs. I think that makes sense, so.
and just with the overhaul of the zoning, I don't know what R1 might mean or R2 might mean necessarily. And I'm just thinking about how, if it's a new development, why are they having to get a PUD? What are they not complying with that they would have to do a PUD for?
I think it's just.
Other than the property zoned agricultural, they're wanting to build a residential neighborhood.
That's it, really.
And so, but that, and ideally, it might be a mixed use neighborhood.
In the PUD process, you could ask for all sorts of additional things, but then, the more you ask for, the
Right. And
harder
so,
it is to get something approved, and so.
maybe, I'm sorry, I'm not following, but so if somebody comes in with the code that we have right now, and they wanted to do R1, they would have to do the setbacks that we have right now.
Yep.
If we waited, if we don't do anything right now, and got our zoning code updated, then they could come in with a preliminary plat, and we're gonna change the R1 regulations. I mean, I see that here, this is what your goal is, right? So anything past what we're going to do in the new code would be the PUD. But I'm thinking they would be able to come in and do straight zoning once we get the code updated.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too.
Okay.
So they wouldn't, yeah, but that's rezoning, straight rezoning instead of PUDs might be more favorable if that,
I see what you're saying.
yeah.
Yeah, just do a straight rezoning to R1, not, okay.
But but the basis being that any undeveloped property in Norman right now is probably not allowable for residential or commercial in the way that a big development's gonna wanna do. And it's probably gonna have to come and get,
But you don't necessarily have to do a
What
PUD.
they
you
want.
have
but you may
to-
not have to.
Right.
Right, yeah. Okay. Oh, man.
So the question,
I
so
thought
the
this was
question
such a
is,
simple
do
deal.
we-
Just
do
get,
we
you know,
wait?
just get rid of the
Yeah,
requirement.
do we wait and do the code?
The only
update?
thing I hate about waiting is I know this is like a multi-year process to get the zoning ordinance overdated, and we need housing today. Not that we're gonna change this rule and all of a sudden we have a bunch of housing, but 3 years, 2 years of runway, what could be built in that time? I'd hate to, get further and further behind the 8 ball. So, if there was a way to make this change now with eyes toward the future and the zoning ordinance updates, that would be my preference. Mayor Holman, sorry. I'll just say this is an open
I'd go
discussion.
with the
Everybody can speak
15,
up.
I mean, I'd push for the 1,500 that I recommended, but I mean, I'm willing to say, what if we change it to, there's a minimum of 2,000? square feet. It's between mine and the staff recommendation. And, but it's not 5 feet on each side or a 50, it's, except for the garage part. I think the garage setback, just because of sight and blocking the sidewalk, that should stay, but, 2,000 square foot minimum lot, that would be a reduction of 4,000 square feet from our current minimum. And we say we're gonna reduce it to 2,000 square feet minimum. How you configure the building on the property is a different thing, perhaps. And then, once everything's done, council, at that time, if there is a desire by council, then to revisit that, once we have new zoning regs in, if we want to eliminate it completely at that time or whatever. But maybe that's a compromise. We can get something in place now that changes what we have right now.
Councilmember Grant?
Yeah, I'm supportive of that. It seems like a incremental step, gives us the ability to work through what might come forward with that. And just to be clear, we're talking about the new development on this one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so just to make clear, so we're saying 2,000 square foot minimum, 25-foot setback to garage, and then
No side
let
yard.
them decide how they want to configure from there.
All of our residential districts,
The
okay,
new ones.
New, yeah, for new
for
developments.
new development. So as an example, if we have an R2 lot right now and they want to put a garage apartment on it, they're going to follow what's currently in the code. We're not touching that right now, correct?
I would think
Okay.
so.
And they're allowed to by
It's gonna-
right because it's R2.
Yes,
Yes.
yes, I just
They
wanna make
have to
sure
meet
we're
the
not,
current stated.
because we start doing that and it's just this domino that
Yeah.
will take, okay.
Then it becomes very onerous to get everything straightened out in all of the zoning codes.
I rarely do this, but I didn't see if through, okay, Mr. Martin, we do actually have a couple people that might be able to speak to this. Any cries of outrage from you guys on what we've discussed today, or points of reference that we need to be thinking about?
I don't know that we know how to spell Greenfield yet.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough.
Very much
But-
like the free
I will-
market philosophy, Mayor, so that's great.
Awesome.
I will say, when we made application on a preliminary plat, planning did give us some good ideas, and we followed through on moving the houses forward.
Awesome, excellent. Glad to hear that. Well, thank you.
I would add that, remember that when the city annexed Hall Park, because they had lower standards than Norman, all those residents were assessed not a fine, they were assessed a amount of money to upgrade all of their infrastructure to meet our standards in Norman. So when you're thinking about willy-nilly standards, you wanna make sure that there's something that's there that meets Norman's expectations, whatever those may be.
That's fair, that's fair. Okay. I think it sounds like a plan. Next steps, full council.
Are you good?
Yeah,
Nothing
we-
else?
That's a first reading and a second reading?
Sorry, I can't see back over the,
Well, it's a planning commission and then it's,
okay.
I just have to throw it out there, we're making the driveway longer than we require right now.
What was that again? I'm sorry. We
We're
are?
making the yeah, if we did 25 right now, we only require 20 for the driveway.
And we are seeing the bumpers hanging out over the sidewalks.
Yeah.
Which could be
Well,
an
we
easy
see that
issue.
usually at 25.
I think getting the garage further away from the street, just from a visual and like use, feel standpoint, I think is a good thing. We call them snout houses. You see them a lot, where the garage is the most front-facing element, and quality of life in those neighborhoods, I can't imagine is too great. But again, that's the market. People are able to build those and sell those or rent them. So I'm not gonna critique too heavily on it. It's just personal preference. I think pushing the drive or the garage back as far as possible is positive. So, Mayor Holman.
And they're not being required to make the front door up by the street and the garage in the back. They could make the garage 25 and the front door 30 if they want, right? So they wouldn't have to make, if they want the garage to be the featured prominent thing. But staff, you're saying that 20 feet
Well, I
our
live
current standard
I live
with
in a
current
snout house
vehicles are.
where my garage is 25 feet. You know, you gotta buy what you can. Everyone in our neighborhood parks over the sidewalk because that's 2-car lengths.
It's 25 or 20.
Would be the 25.
Our
So if
current
you go
standard is 20.
a little bit shorter, you can't park because then you're in the street.
Were you saying our current standard though is 20? Or
For
is-
driveways,
The
but like if
minimum.
you're a snout house, so proud.
It's 20.
You have to be at 25.
So right now our standard is 25 in cars.
Well, our front
A single
setback is-
car is more than 25 feet.
But like if you have a garage on your side, it has to
Okay.
be 20.
You're saying though that it gives people enough more, if you had less room, then you could only park one car.
Yeah.
You don't have the room to park two.
Because people are
with or
willing to go
without.
over the sidewalk, they're not willing to be in the street.
Right, exactly, that's, I think, I get what you're saying. Well,
So
Well
being
said.
shorter to accommodate
Well
only
said.
one car is probably better.
yeah, it's,
Just throwing it out there,
no,
so.
that's a good
It's-
point,
it's
that's
a
a
way
good
of
point,
cra-
yeah, cause you basically cap it at one car.
It's a good way to control the cars
For
in
sure.
the driveway.
Cause it's also, it's 20 feet from the property line, which is usually behind the sidewalk and behind, so it's really
It's at
another
the sidewalk.
10 feet from the street, you're talking, if you got 25, you're now 35 feet from the street, which is
2 small cars.
definitely enough
And the
for-
developer could put the garage back further if they want to have a bigger, longer
Yeah,
driveway.
We used to put them, 10-foot wide driveway, all the garages were in the backyard, not necessarily alley loaded.
Yeah, I think-
Just drove beside your house to get to your garage.
I think Ms. Hoggett makes an excellent point. I think I might be in favor of the 20 feet.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Same.
just because it's like, if it's a minimum,
They
again,
can
With
build
the fact
further,
that it's
you
already
can,
built in.
Yeah.
I mean, it's already there as 20.
We don't
Right,
want to
it's
make
not
No
even
real
a
change there.
So yeah, the developer can make it 30 if they want, but
but the minimum, we're trying to set minimums
Minimum.
here, so like, don't, let's not make the minimum 2-car deep. Minimum's 1-car deep, and you can go beyond that if you want. Okay, I think it makes sense. Thank you.
Are we done?
That's why we have these little meetings.
Thank you, Doug.
I think so.
Good stuff.
Anything else? Okay, awesome. Well, I appreciate you guys' help. Thank you, Mr. Sturts, for the reality check. No, absolutely, absolutely. I know this is, like I said, I've dreamt this up in a vacuum. I know that reality is not a vacuum, so I appreciate you, going through the minutia with us, definitely.
So I'll say, we'll work on this, we'll submit it for January application, which puts it on February planning commission. We can fast track, first reading on the second meeting in February, so you guys would vote on it first meeting March.
Love it.
Okay? Okay, if we run into any problems as we start to go through this, I'm gonna ask to come back
Please do, yeah.
and just see what you think.
You have an open agenda item in this committee.
Okay.
besides ADA accessibility, I really want to go back to traditional city development.
Yeah, same here.
How our cities developed before we tried to regulate everything, which resulted in everything being all disconnected and spread out and
Yep.
costly to build.
No front porches.
And like we said, you can, if you have a product that you build right now and that's your standard and that's what you want to keep doing, then you'd still be able to do what you're doing. This is just saying we're not going to make you
Yeah.
do what you've been doing.
It's very much like the parking. Like we just kind of, we give a certain base set of expectations, but, try to let,
But this is gonna give us a great runway for while we work on the code.
Yeah.
To see what we have coming in as applications. And so we'll be able to refer back to this and see if we get many applications
What the
coming in. So
market's
it'd
saying.
be great runway for us as we go through that process.
I'd still like to figure out a way if we can get a couple of home builders around the table and just kind of workshop a few things, even.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely,
just,
as we initiate early meetings on that zoning code update, yeah, that kind of participative conversation will be very valuable for us.
Excellent. Well, I appreciate your hard work.
Absolutely, thank you.
If there's nothing else, this meeting's adjourned. Thank you, guys.